What a perfect place to host some of the world's leading experts here in Tbilisi. Excuse me, Tbilisi.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. No worries. We'll have some drinks, cha-cha, and it will fix itself. No.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's get
Let's
these
do it.
guests. Our time's short. I know you guys want to enjoy and learn some amazing things from world leaders. I'm going to start off with Jessica Tams. Jessica Tams, she's an expert games industry veteran with over 25 years experience spanning development, publishing, and strategic leadership. She currently serves on Atari's board of directors, is a venture partner at Griffin Gaming Partners, and advises manga productions. As founder and managing director of Casual Connect since 2006, she built the world's largest international games B2B event across 4 continents while launching Indie Prize and Game Sauce. Essential go-to market programs for independent developers. Her technical background includes founding the studios between the first Xbox Live arcade titles and developing the revamped games for Windows Solitaire with degrees in mathematics, physics, and computer science. Now, Jessica Tams brings unparalleled expertise in global market expansion, venture investment, and building international gaming ecosystems, offering invaluable insights for developers and entrepreneurs seeking to scale across diverse markets. Let's give it up for Jessica Tams, everybody.
Whoop, whoop. Yay. And joining us on stage is Abigail Hing. Abigail is New York Times bestselling author, executive producer, and a global storyteller. With novels translated into multiple languages, adapted into major motion pictures like Love in Taipei, she has built a career crafting narratives that blend cultural specificity with mass appeal. That's amazing. Her next major project will focus on Central Asia in partnership with regional creative agencies, a transmedia series that brings new stories to the global stage. From AI to diaspora to diplomacy, Abigail's work reminds us that location is not a limitation, it's a launchpad. Woo!
Hey, give him a round of applause, everybody.
Round of applause, warm welcome.
Let's hear it.
You can do warmer, guys, come on. One more time with love.
Yeah. That was there it goes. That was a great introduction. Chris wrote that himself, so it's always interesting to hear what somebody says about you.
Thank you all for having us. It's been amazing to be here. We just had a tour this morning of the city, and it's incredible. So thank you for your hospitality and your welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So when I first called up Abigail, I was asking her about her work at Ride Back Rise because I thought that it would be a really great program to copy here in the Caucasus region. And as we were talking, we realized that there was so many overlaps and ways that Abigail was already working with this region. And so I wanted to ask you, why are you interested in the Caucasus and Central Asia region? And how did you get interested? What was your background coming here?
Yeah. Well, so I actually wrote a novel based in Central Asia I think it's been about 10 years now since I wrote it. I spent some time in this area, in this city that I fell in love with, and for many years I actually wrote 5 novels on the way to my first published novel, so that was the second one I wrote. And I think they say the first place that you visit outside of your country is the place that stays with you forever, and I think that was true for me.
Yeah. So. That's great. And so you're working on a novel. Can you speak about where that's going to be, where that's going to be set?
Yeah, so that one is not announced yet. It's probably my 7th novel. I have my 5th novel that's coming out this year in September called The Veil. And then I have a graphic novel coming out with HarperCollins in probably 2 years from now. It's being illustrated. It's fully written. And then after that is this novel that we're talking about. It takes a long time to publish a novel. I've probably been writing that one. It's pulled from my old novel, but it's also things that came out of my time in my MFA program. And it draws on the lessons that I've learned through my studies of international relations and government at Harvard and my travels to 50 different countries. And for me, the central question of that story is, why are we still at war? And what will it take to end war?
Yeah. So you've placed your stories in Taipei, DC, and Central Asia. How do you decide which country and which area to actually base your stories in?
I think for me, it's just really I follow the story. What is the most authentic way to tell the story? So for my first novel, which is set in Taipei, it's actually based on a real experience I had. So I was invited by the Taiwanese government when I was a high school student to visit Taipei as part of this program. It was to learn language and culture and reconnect with your heritage, reconnect with your parents' heritage. And it was a program that had been around since the 1960s. Thousands of Asian American, Asian Australian, Asian European kids went to this program. It's kind of similar to a program in Israel called the Birthright Program, and I think there are other programs like that in other countries. So for me, that was the first time I experienced my parents' culture and made it my own, and that became the subject of the novel. For me, it was also a way of portraying this community that the world didn't really know about. It was like partly putting Taipei on the map, but also partly expressing like what it's like to be a girl between cultures, and trying to explore like how does she honor her family who wants her to be a doctor while pursuing her passions and her dreams of being a dancer.
So you've worked with publishers and studios and regional creative industries. So how do you bring this global content into these local markets, and why do you really push going into these local markets and with these local stories and bringing them globally?
So I think what I've learned in my process of writing Love Boat Taipei, I didn't actually know that it would end up becoming translated into so many languages and reaching across cultures. I thought it was an obscure story about this obscure experience of, Asian American girl going to Taipei. But what I find, and this is true for all of you here in Georgia, like the more specific your story, the more unique, the more individual, the more universal it becomes. And so Love Boat Taipei actually has been translated now into 12 languages. The movie adaptation, Love in Taipei, just dropped on Netflix internationally a couple weeks ago, so now it can be heard around the world. And the book itself came out in France and Poland just this year, but also it's come out in Romania, Hungary, Russia, and Italian and Chinese. There's some, and I actually don't even know all the languages. But I think for me, it was amazing to realize that this experience of this girl trying to come to a deeper understanding of her parents ended up being a universal experience that other people could relate to.
That's interesting. So you're saying that telling the stories, like really making sure to capture all of the local culture and the local lore, really helps it to become internationally appealing.
Yeah, I think so. The title of the movie is called Love in Taipei. The book itself was called Love Boat Taipei. That was the nickname of the program because it was known as a summer of romance. Lots of kids falling in love for the first time. And my publisher, my filmmakers, so Paramount, actually changed the title to Love in Taipei because the idea is anyone in the world can relate to this story. It's a romance, a romantic comedy set in Taipei, this interesting country, this interesting city that you may never have been to, but by watching the movie, you can learn all about the culture. And so we did spend a lot of time making sure that there were authentic representations. They eat xiaolongbao, which is very similar to the food here. There's history, there's dance, there's language, and there are calligraphy classes, and just all these elements of what it's like to live in Taipei. And I think that showcase of this place to the world is also partly why it's been appealing worldwide.
Yeah, interesting. So a lot of people think when they're creating, some creative enterprises, they think that they need to go out and go into Hollywood, go into the United States, go into these other regions that are currently pushing out content. And so do you think that if somebody is here, that they should be focused on going to Hollywood, or do you think that maybe building something here would actually be a better path to success?
Oh, I absolutely think that Hollywood is hungry for international content. Like I just a couple days ago, I was talking to a producer who was watching Norwegian film. It was a Norwegian TV series, 6 episodes, and it was only made for, I think, something like $600,000. The problem is there's been so much content created because the streamers were over investing in films and TV, and it's expensive, and they can't justify the cost of these big movies in Hollywood anymore. And so they are looking for content that can be made smartly, cost-effectively, reasonable budgets, and also interesting content that no one's ever seen before. So I absolutely think that stories out of this region can have appeal in Hollywood and for the world.
Interesting. So right now you work with Ride Back Rise. So can you talk about that program and why it exists and what you guys really focus on?
Yeah, so
On the
it
way
has
back.
been a fabulous program. So it's a nonprofit started by Dan Lin, who is now the chairman of Netflix Films, and I can talk about what's publicly available. You could definitely do some, Google searches for Ride Back Rise, but the idea was to help incubate creators, especially people of color, people who come from marginalized backgrounds, and give them the ingredients they need, give them the skills, the know-how, the information to navigate Hollywood and take their creations to the next commercial level. And again, like having that big commercial vision is important because at the end of the day, it's a business. So your movie needs to be able to bring people into the into the theaters or gain eyeballs on the streaming platforms. And so that's part of like the things that we're learning about. How do we take our property and our intellectual property and make it a bigger story?
Yeah, interesting. The Ride Back Rise programs are really great in Hollywood. I've been to a lot of their programs, and what I really like about it is that they're really trying to bring diversity into the voices in Hollywood, and so that's something that we really like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So as you've been writing for global audiences, how do you balance the nuances and cultural themes with the fact that it's going to be for a global audience? How do you make sure that you're not misrepresenting and then also at the same time not offending? And what are maybe some examples of things that, as you've been doing your research,
Yeah.
if you're comfortable sharing,
Right,
like things that you
absolutely.
thought, like when we get this perception of what a different culture is from the American perspective, we
Yeah.
might not really understand all of the nuances.
Yeah, no, this is
inside
like
that.
a $1 million question. I'm sure if you've ever seen films in areas that you are the expert in, you'll probably see a lot of inaccuracies. Like, it's actually really hard for me to watch legal dramas and legal thrillers because I'm a lawyer, and I will catch all these little nuances. I'm like, oh, that's actually not realistic. But for the vast majority of audience who aren't legal experts, it doesn't bother them, and they are able to immerse in the story. But I do actually think authenticity is really important, and I personally am committed to trying to make a story as accurate as possible. But sometimes you have to balance that desire for accuracy with a budget. And you can't always find all the experts that you need to make it happen. So for me, in doing Love in Taipei, that authentic representation of Asian culture and Asian American culture was really important to me because that's why I wrote the series. I wanted to share this community with the world, and I wanted to do that in a way that was respectful and authentic and humanized all my characters so they were well-rounded people that people could understand and relate to. But there are inaccuracies in the film. So for example, there's Ever talks about going to Case Western Reserve University, and I think they set it in Chagrin Falls, but it's actually not set there, it's in Cleveland. So there's these little location differences that, at the end of the day when I was on set and I had to pick my battles, that was something I just let slide. I'm like, okay, we won't be accurate 100% about the geography of Ohio, but we are going to be accurate about this line about Asian Americans, people realizing, oh, they're cool now, versus in the past, they didn't get the spotlight. Things
Yeah.
like that were more important to me.
So what advice would you have for people in this region who there's not a lot of creative content coming out yet? How should they get that content out into the global market? What should they focus on, specifically because you've been pushing out this really local content globally? What could they do
Yeah, well,
internationally?
first, tell your stories. Find the stories that are unique to you, the things that you're passionate about that no one else can tell. For example, I was really excited to see the Georgia Chronicles, so we went up to check it out. This is a really cool area. I'm like, oh, I could see a movie set here, which is a gorgeous area, and there's all this story that's already built into this, and it's really unique to this area. I've never seen anything like it in my travels around the world. So that could be a really cool story. But there's also stories about the many generations of countries and nations and empires that have come through this area. I'm writing about those things in my work, but I think hearing it from your perspective would be really incredibly fascinating. And you do the best movie, the best story that you could tell, and then lean on your government, lean on your resources to get that content more globally known. It doesn't mean that you have to be the one to take it to the world, but you want it to be discovered by the gatekeepers, by the streamers. So this guy I mentioned, this producer, he was looking at this Norwegian TV series. He found it just because like word of mouth, or he was like, people are looking for this content. And so by giving it visibility within your own country, they will go to the tastemakers of Georgia and say, hey, what's good here? What is it that people like? And so by building that expertise, that buzz here is a way for you to get discovered elsewhere.
So most of your creative work starts as a novel.
That's right.
And if somebody was interested in doing creative work, do you think that that's the best place to start? Or would there be maybe some short form, online? And how do you actually decide where your content is going to be released? You have your book, and why do you choose, for example, Netflix over, say, film?
Right. So this is actually a question that I've been trying to educate my fellow screenwriters in Hollywood. A lot of them will write these, the word on the street is like you'll write 40 screenplays and only 2 of them would get made into a movie. And that means you've buried 38 stories that you've poured your heart and soul into. And so what I've actually been trying to tell them to do is go ahead and publish it first. Turn that script into a novel and publish it. You can also publish it as a short story or a graphic novel. Sometimes translating a movie to a graphic novel is even more direct. Short stories are somewhat easier because they're shorter, but it's harder to find venues for that. And the reason why I think it's important to publish it is, one, it lives on. It's so hard to get a movie made, but if you publish the book, there's a little bit of less of a hurdle. Your book will live on, and you never know what's going to happen to it. Like someone could pick it up years later after you died, right? There's so many movies now that are being made from authors who've passed away. But your IP would live on. And the second reason to do that is that you own the intellectual property, and then you can do things with that intellectual property. You can license it to be adapted to a film. You can also license it to be adapted to a game. My 4th novel, which came out last August, called Kisses, Codes, and Conspiracies, it's a Silicon Valley-based heist, and we are now in the process of having it adapted into a live-action game, as well as having conversations around video game. And I might actually explore those before I do a film, because I think that it lends itself well to that, and then after that you can adapt a game to a film. So there's so many things that open up for you when you control the intellectual property yourself. So I'm a big proponent of doing that.
That's interesting. So one thing I've noticed in watching your career is that you're very involved inside of the community and inside of the Comic-Cons, inside of like a lot of the promotion and really reaching out to the community. So what role does the community play in your actual marketing of your products, and why do you put such a focus on that?
Yeah, well, the community is essential. Like, I would not be where I am without the support of the community, because as I said, at the end of the day, you need to get word out on your stories, and technology, fortunately, makes that a lot easier. The algorithms on Netflix are very good. Like when Love in Taipei was released on Netflix, a lot of my friends messaged me like, whoa, it came across my feed. And that told me like, okay, it's getting to the people who are interested in my stories and care about it. But we need to go beyond that. Like we ourselves need to create word of mouth and buzz. And that's really for books. Like my author friends will tell you like the most important way to get word out on books is just like, readers, please talk about this book with your friends. Like talk about it in your book clubs, post about it online through social media. And that's how you build a fan base and an audience. And so for me, that community support from everyone that I meet, that I speak to at the Comic-Cons and at events like this, like I rely on you guys to help get word out.
Yeah. So you were saying that as you're creating screenplays and you're creating these creative works, you're creating a lot of content that doesn't actually get used, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you handle that emotionally, where you're creating, say, as you're saying, like 40 screenplays and 38 screenplays, and then only 2 of them get picked up? Is that something that is difficult? Like, what's the emotional process in actually kind of pushing through that rejection process?
It is hard. Like I mentioned, I buried 5 novels on the way to Love Boat Taipei. But this one, The Veil, which I said is coming out in September, this is the last novel that I buried before Love in Taipei. And I wrote it in 2015, so 10 years ago. And it's the story of an inventor family in Silicon Valley that creates an AI-generated virtual fantasy world. And it was too early for its time. My agent at the time was like, what is this? I can't get behind it. Nobody knew what AI generation was. And I thought it was dead. Like, I just thought I had to give it up. And I went on to publish Love Boat Taipei. I published the 2 sequels to Love Boat Taipei and then my 4th novel that I mentioned. And then I started working on a short film, actually, because I wanted to move into directing, and my reps suggested that I do a short film as a calling card. And the only short film I could think of was a prequel to this story of like, how did the inventor family come up with this idea in the first place? So I started writing that script, and as I was creating that short film, we brought on Lea Salonga, who was my childhood hero. She was the voice of Mulan and Jasmine in the Disney movies. She sang the songs, and she was also the first Miss Saigon on Broadway. But as we were going through that process, my book ended up getting picked up by a publisher, and so now this one lives on. So I think part of it is just never giving up hope, finding opportunities to just come at your IP in a different way, and but also like the journey is important. An actor's life, a writer's life is mostly rejection, but I think of that rejection as just you're growing in your craft as a writer, as an artist, and you're also growing and figuring out who are my creative partners. And it's like dating, right? You just takes a long time to find those people whose work you resonate with and who resonate with your work.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Keep going. So can you talk about the importance of your professional community? And this is a great question because I'm part of Abigail's professional community, right?
Yeah.
But how does making those connections and fostering those connections and helping each other, like actually giving before you receive, how has that helped you in your career?
You know, it's not something that I had thought about. I think, but it's absolutely important to have this lifestyle of giving, this posture of giving. I don't think about it, but it has come to my attention. Like, oh, I forgot that I made those introductions of these people. Introductions to me are the things I love to do most because I love connecting talented people with other talented people and for them to find the synergies. But I don't think about it. It's just, I think, a natural way of life. But it does come back because as you make those introductions and you basically bring everyone along with you, everyone grows together, everyone rises up, and we become more and more senior. And through my network, I found my animation director to do the Veil short film with me. So I directed the live action, and he directed the animated portion. And he's part of a community that we're both involved in.
Yeah.
His name is John Aushima, and he was the co-director for Ultraman Rising, which Christopher Sean was the star of.
Which Christopher was
So
starred on.
all full circle. And actually, Christopher Sean introduced me to John at one of the events that we were at. So that's how I met him. And it really is those people that you encounter. You can't know who you're going to work with until you finally meet them. And your network is a big part of that.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And I have bookmarks for everyone, so if it hasn't come to you, they are being passed out, or you can come find me and grab one.
Yeah, cool. And I don't.
All right, give him a round of applause. Are we doing questions?
Yeah. Yeah, we can probably do a couple of questions if anybody has any, or
Is anybody
we're
interested in
almost
asking
out
a
of time.
question?
Yeah, we've got a
We
microphone
got a little bit
here.
of time. We can throw a question out. Again, New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, showrunner, creator of television shows on Netflix. Anyone got a question? I love it. Excitement.
Yeah, this is very Georgia, man. People need some time to open up, but there's definitely going to be some, questions in the backstage. I'm pretty sure some people going to be.
I got
maybe
a
have
question.
to-
Here's a really good question. Success is built upon failures. What would you say is one of the biggest failures that you learned the most from?
Yeah, great question. So Love Boat Taipei, the first novel I published, was actually rejected at version 25. I'd written 25 drafts of it, 120,000 words, and someone very important, a gatekeeper, turned it down. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know what this industry wants for me to publish a book. And but it kind of took that moment of like, okay, I really need to look very hard at this manuscript and figure out what's wrong with it. And I realized it was too much story for one book. I didn't know what constituted a novel. It turned out it was like 5 novels. I'd written the story from 5 different points of view, the main characters that you'll see if you watch the movie. And so once I understood that, I stripped out all those stories. I rewrote the whole book from the ground up from one point of view, and I saved all the extra material for what became book 2. But that was a really important craft lesson for me. But also just like, again, as I said, there's so many ways to come at your failure, and you find the gold in the ashes of what's been burned down. So,
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
That
Thank you
was
so much for
intense.
sharing that.
Yeah.
And thank you guys both for being on stage with us, sharing everything. Do you have any other questions? Yeah, we got one. Here.
All right. Piggybacking on Sean's question. How did you handle that rejection emotionally?
It was tough. So for me, what saved me was my critique partners. Again, the community. I had a group of writers that we had all kind of traded our works with each other for years. And they told me, Abigail, your stuff is good. There's weird reasons why you're not getting through the system. You need to keep going. And then they gave me great advice on my novel. It's really them that they picked me up and put me back on my feet and said, you got to keep going. Like, so build that community, invest in each other's work so that people know your work and you know their work and you keep going together. So definitely follow me on social media. I'm at my name, Abigail Hing on Instagram, TikTok, X, everywhere. And I hope to stay in touch with as many of you as I can.
Thank you.
All right. Give her a round of applause. Thank you guys so much.